Hey, Kosova. Welcome back to another episode of Never the Right Time. This is your host, Coach Q. Today's episode is brought to you by Onze Recovery, 5-Star Fitness, as well as Menda Salon, the preferred salon in Pristina. So today I'm sitting down with Virtyt.
Yes.
He's a fellow personal trainer, amongst many things, but he's someone that I have taken note of first and foremost because, we see each other pretty much every day, Monday through Friday at least. And it's sort of someone that, you take note of people that are lifting very heavy, right?
Yeah, I guess.
And also for the most part, I guess, good form. I mean, we could always critique kind of thing,
exactly.
but like when, someone is as big as he is, you're always kind of curious. Like there's things that maybe you can kind of learn from, and also just, someone that I've started to kind of get to know over the couple months. And so I appreciate you coming and taking the time to have this chat.
You having me here, man. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So I'm going to hand it over to you to kind of give us like an introduction of what you do, because obviously personal training is just one part of it.
Yeah.
All of us personal trainers were in some ways like a jack of all trades, right?
Yes.
Some of us might focus more on the actual training, and then
Yeah.
also what kind of training, nutrition to even lifestyle coaching. There's many facets to it, right? Maybe even part-time therapist as well, right?
Exactly,
that kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah, it does.
So if you could just kind of give us an idea of who you are, what you do, and where you do it at.
So I'll take it from the beginning,
Mhm.
the early beginning. So I've always had a background with sports. So I've been a professional basketball player for like 6 years here in Pristina in the basketball club. That started since I was in high school, and it went until I got to college, basically. That's when I stopped and I got into nutritional sciences. So that's my background, my academic background, I could say.
Okay.
It's like, you could say, nutritional sciences with the faculty's name is food science and nutrition, basically. So I studied nutrition, and I've been training now for like 7 years. I would say 7.5 now. And I've been coaching people for the last 4 years. Yes. So I combine nutritional coaching, you would say, with also gym training.
Mhm.
My preferred training style with clients is like bodybuilding type of training that I coach, I would say. It's more like enhancing the physique type of thing.
Sure.
So that's my specialty, I would say. Also on top of that, you can add the nutritional planning. I also do online coaching as well.
Mhm.
That is for people that are not physically here.
Yeah.
So this is me in a short explanation.
And so, like, how did you kind of get into it? So obviously basketball.
Yeah.
So that's something that I didn't know that was like kind of the beginning of your sports athletic kind of career.
Yeah.
Obviously very physical, demanding, and
Yes.
certainly you had, the height for it as well, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I did and I did not, because basketball includes a lot of taller people than me.
Yeah.
Guys,
Okay.
they are way, way taller than me. So I played like the point guard or the shooting guard position. That is the shorter guy position, I could say.
Well, from my perspective, you guys are all taller than me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I would say the interest in nutrition started when I was finishing high school, because I was still playing and I was getting more and more interested, because I noticed that my training was going very well, but my diet was not on point, because I basically didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
I was trying to eat healthier, but my healthier approach was, I don't know how to say it, but it wasn't optimal. I was trying to eat more protein, like reduce the sugar amounts of the food that I eat, stuff like that. But it wasn't good, because I wasn't seeing like body composition changes, I would say. So that raised my interest in the field. So I got curious. I searched for the faculties that are around, and this was I would say my preferred choice. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, what you don't know, right? And
Yeah.
we're kind of like, you know, so my background being a football player,
Okay.
you know, I have to be honest also, like when I was playing, it was, you know, you're focusing on playing, right?
Exactly.
And you're focused on your training as well.
Yeah.
I think there's a part where you kind of let youth get away with certain
Yeah.
things where you eating enough, let's say,
Yeah.
probably not the best foods, but like it's more just like, all right, I'm hungry, I need to fuel myself,
Yeah.
and then go, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's you know, you're eating maybe some protein, but you're just kind of eating whatever is like
Yeah.
almost accessible, right?
Yeah, you think that you are, but in reality you're not.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, because unfortunately we didn't have like a nutritionist in our team, or like people that
I mean,
could tell us what to actually eat, because I could say that especially here in Kosovo, it's a very nuanced field and people don't really know anything about it, I would say, until now.
I think that's worldwide, right?
Yeah,
Like,
especially here though. Yeah, it's very new, I would say. It's one of the newest sciences that actually is right now, and people think that they know a lot about it, but in reality they don't. Yeah, especially here, I would say.
yeah, and we'll definitely go into it a little bit more, but I think with like the advancement of like social media, right?
Yeah.
It's where all these where all of a sudden like everyone is an expert, right?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
you listen to
Yeah.
a 15-second TikTok and it tells you something, like someone
Yeah,
who
and
has
you
a
think
large
that you know.
following.
Yeah.
Sure, why not, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Going back to sort of like when your initial interest, you mentioned like these body composition kind of changes, right?
Yeah.
So because also like I think sports, well, training itself, and then also sports has like advanced like the textbooks are kind of wrong now when it comes to like sports. Not wrong, but a lot has been kind of redefined, let's say, right? Sports physics, like, you know, knees over toes, like was considered a bad thing because it, you know, and now it's like everyone's doing it, right? So but like when you were kind of thinking about this body composition, like what were you seeking? Because that was still within the basketball context, right?
Of course. Yeah, I was trying to, because I was also doing gym training while I was playing basketball.
Yeah.
So I was trying to get better at basketball by training at the gym.
Sure.
That was my goal. And I would say it was to probably get leaner, because at a high demanding sport like basketball, you have to be leaner to perform better. Well, that was my main goal there, to like lose body fat, I would say, because I was at the higher percentage of body fat, and I didn't have like a big amount of muscle mass that I currently have, because I had to be leaner, of course. Be more, have more cardio, like say endurance type of. I mean, yeah, of course, because that's the most demanding part of the sport.
Because European basketball, was it 20-minute halves? Is it?
No, 40.
Like, wait, but one half is 20 minutes, right? The whole game is 40 minutes, or was it 40 minutes? How long is one game here? Because I know NBA is 12-minute quarters, right? Yeah. The US is different, right? Like European it's 2 halves, or is it in quarters now?
It's like 4 quarters.
Oh, 4 quarters.
4
okay.
Quarters, yeah. 10 minutes, I think.
10 minutes? Yeah. Okay. I mean, but back and forth, right? And especially if you're a starter, 5 players, right?
Yeah. It's very, very demanding. I would say like one of the most demanding sports, most physically taxing sports, I would say. Yeah. Because the whole, like you said, 5 players have to go defense, have to go offense constantly. Is very demanding. And unlike football, football is also demanding. I'm not saying that, but it's like you have certain positions in the field and you don't like move pretty much from those. In basketball, you have to run.
Goalkeeper, right?
Yeah. Like in basketball, you have to run constantly.
Nothing against goalkeepers, but yeah, I mean, being a point guard, shooting guard, you are the pivot, like the focus of the transition, right? As well, right?
Yeah.
You kind of dictate in some ways the tempo of the game.
Yeah,
right?
You do. Yeah, you have to be like the brain of the team also. Yeah, that can be also one of the most, even more demanding than just running, because you have to think for the whole team.
Sure. Yeah. So like you were like, okay, there's this missing kind of, I mean, that's already pretty cool to hear, to like be conscious and like, all right, there's a missing part of my game that I know I can definitely like kind of, that will help me improve my overall basketball game. So then when you enrolled into the university and started your studies, like I'm also trying to think, like, then you continued basketball, but then eventually you decided to become more of a when did the change or the focus to personal training like happen?
Yeah, that slightly started happening while I got into college. I was still playing in college, but it wasn't like my focus changed because I had to study more, obviously.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be like present all the time in trainings. And that like started changing pretty rapidly, I would say. But I was also training at the gym, so I started to like fade away from basketball a little bit. And it just got, I would say, in a span of like 6 to 8 months, I was done.
Okay, you were like, okay.
Yeah, can't do it anymore. I'm just gonna focus on studying, focus on training, because I really like training at the gym while I was also playing basketball. So that I didn't let go. And continued doing that. As I got more into the gym, I noticed like more muscle gains because I was not doing a lot of cardio from the basketball. So that changed. Yeah. Because when you do a lot of cardio, you can't like gain a ton of muscle, obviously.
I mean, that's why I guess for serious athletes, right? And someone like following probably a schedule like you were, I mean, basketball practice was probably every day, right?
Yes, it was sometimes even twice a day. I also had gym training, so it's like 3 times a day training.
So then when does your body recover kind of thing, right? Like you're kind of in some ways also, I mean, how much do you also need to eat, and correctly even more so, to kind of maintain, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't know anything about that while I was doing it, because it got really demanding on my body as well. I started having aches, started having pains on my back, knees, because as you said, you didn't have the recovery capacities to fulfill your trainings. I guess I was under eating protein. I was overeating more like carbohydrate type of foods, more fat kind of foods. The calories weren't sufficient, and the recovery wasn't, I would say, optimal.
Okay.
Yeah. And when you're young, you don't know those things. And
of course, you're not the only one. You know? Yeah.
And when you don't have the proper guidance for that, that's even worse. Yeah. But hopefully I didn't got injured or anything like that. But as I said, I started to fade away slowly, and I got more into training, bodybuilding, because I liked bodybuilding training even then.
Yeah.
I was always passionate about having good physique, but I wasn't to like have a bodybuilding-esque kind of physique. I was like, I preferred an athletic kind of body because I was also playing.
Yeah.
So that transitioned for me slowly. As I got more into the gym, started gaining some weight. As I said, I didn't do as much cardio as I used to. And I started to change my body composition, I would say. And in a span of 6 to 10 months, I gained 12 to 14 kilograms. Yeah.
So from your playing days?
Yeah,
then
when
already...
I transitioned to college.
Okay.
Yeah, this happened. I gained 10 to 12 kilograms, I would say.
And I guess probably it was an interesting change for you because going from a team sport, right, to then it's just kind of you. I mean, you individual. Train with other people, that kind of thing. But
but it's all individual, I would say.
Yeah. What kind of, so then, okay, in terms of your approach, again, that was probably you're trying to figure it out on your own at the same time, right? So what, and for me, the first days in the gym, whether it was with football or after football, I'm just looking around and it's okay, he's benching, so I guess I got to do that. You see something in pop culture, then you're all right, big chest, that kind of thing. So then, how did you kind of navigate those initial kind of months in terms of yeah, how did you dive into that? Like,
Yeah. Well,
did you have a trainer that kind of helped you out as well, or?
to be honest, the gym training type of thing I figured out myself.
Mhm.
While I was also playing basketball, I was also searching how to like train chest, how to train back, how to train arms, how to train legs. But it was more focused on the athletic type of training
Mhm.
because I didn't want to get like, you can say, not be able to perform in my sport. I was doing
Yeah.
sport specific movements to like get better at my sport. I was
Sure.
trying to, I think, with
Mm.
what I knew then. But yeah, so I transitioned. I started to train more like specific body part type of thing.
Okay.
Started eating more. I didn't have that much of an energy expenditure because I wasn't playing that much. I was walking less, doing less cardio, and my physique started to change pretty rapidly, I would say. And that's when I knew that doing too much cardio can, I would say, negatively impact body composition changes.
Mm.
Even, of course, if you want to lose weight, that can be a problem. Also, if you don't eat enough, which we'll get more into later. But
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, and then like that kind of, you're like, all right, is it sort of that bro split that you kind of started doing and playing around with?
Yes, that's what I started with. It was like one day you do chest, one day you do back, one day you do arms, one day you do legs. And yeah, this was basically it. I mean, this was a good split, but not the most optimal one, I would say. It was what I knew at the time. And it was like, I had pretty little knowledge, I would say, because I did everything like to failure. It was, yeah, like that bro mentality, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of volume, like not enough rest. The intensity was high, but you know, when you don't really understand the science behind training, it gets pretty rough. You hit the brick wall very fast. And I was like, I remember one day I went to the gym and I was starting to warm up, and it was a weight that I usually warm up with, and I just started doing bench, and it didn't went up. It just stuck, and I couldn't physically move it.
Yeah.
That's when I know something was wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, because it got to that point that I basically didn't know deload weeks even existed.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you have to like rest, you have to periodize your training and like build up, and you go down and you build up. No, nothing. And I just got stuck there. So somebody had to help me to get out of there, and I just went home that day. I didn't train because it was so like mentally, like I got shocked because I didn't know what happened. It was like, and then I started reading more, and I got into like periodized training, as I said, learned more about deloading type of things,
like kind of working in like, you know, how blocks basically, right? Like what is 4 6 week, you know, or 3-month blocks, and then kind of like the different phases within that, right? To kind of and then what at the same time you're going through your studies. So then you're probably experimenting there too.
Yes. I was the good thing about when I started studying is that I also started learning more about nutrition. That helped a lot. So while I was training, I was also learning more about things like proteins, like carbohydrates, like fats and calories. And as I got more into that, I got also more into like the training type of thing with like scientific backgrounds. And I started to incorporate the both. And that's when I started to really like see changes and like really see progress with what I wanted to do, like the goals that I had. Basically, the goals that I had was like gain more muscle. That was my, I would say, goal that I also have now, because the main thing I do train about is bodybuilding. So bodybuilding training is the pursuit of a better physique, you would say.
Aesthetics,
short explanation,
right?
Aesthetics. And that was it. My, I would say, how it started.
So because like it's like if people saw, if they take a look at, for example, your social media, right, Instagram, and you have it,
Yeah.
right, like in terms of basically the transformation
Yeah.
kind of thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like pretty ridiculous,
Yeah.
right? Kind of
Yeah.
in terms of like, it wasn't like, I mean, you were an athlete to begin with,
Yeah.
and then you became a different kind of athlete,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's something to like, I mean, it's very remarkable. And also I think it's probably one of the things that, like, you probably talked, or people come up to you and ask you,
Yeah.
like, and it's like, it's years of work,
Yes.
right, that you've
Yes.
put in, right, and you've
Yeah.
played around a little bit of trial and error
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing, and then obviously people are like, hey, give me 30 days, what can I, kind of thing,
Exactly.
which
Yeah,
it doesn't happen
that
like
happens quite a lot, though,
Yeah.
that question. Yeah.
So it's sort of like, so when you, and then I guess at some point you were like, okay, this is really what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to become a personal trainer.
Yes, that started when I was in college. Yeah. While I was studying, I was learning more about training. Then I started like helping some of my friends train.
Because they were probably seeing like, hey,
Yeah.
man, what's your secret,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Kind
yeah.
of.
While I was training my friends, I started also to learn more about how to approach training people.
Yeah.
That was the hardest part, I would say, because when you think you know about coaching yourself, you haven't really started coaching other people to actually know what coaching is about. That was my biggest challenge, I would say. Yes, it started with friends, ended up coaching then, I would say, after a year, started with clients.
Yeah.
And it went from here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's one thing, like, you can experiment with yourself, right?
Yeah.
And then every other person that you are coaching, I mean, they're a unique puzzle that you
Yeah.
kind of have to figure out, right?
Yeah.
Like, because, I mean, I think we all struggle at times to be as honest with
Yeah.
ourselves in terms of like, okay, is my sleep probably, am I,
Yeah.
is my nutrition kind of thing? And then it's like, you with discipline and willpower and all this, like,
Yeah.
you can, you could dial it in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But with clients, it's, I'll do it, whatever,
Yeah.
and then it sometimes shows it doesn't, right? Kind of things, right? So then I guess, like, going in terms of sort of like when you started then practicing with it, and I think this is probably where, like, for the audience it'd be probably the most interesting, is like, sort of what are the like most common kind of questions, or what are the assumptions, let's say, also that people come up to you for?
You mean in regards to training?
Yeah, well, probably more on the nutritional side. We can
Okay.
certainly touch the training side as well.
Okay.
But when it comes to, I mean, often when you probably sit down with someone, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like, you want to work together.
Yeah.
Like, they state certain things, and you kind of try to paint a
Yeah.
picture of that individual, right?
Yeah,
So, and probably, easily, like, it's either weight loss or I want more muscle, depending on who, right? There are these common kind of goals that everyone is striving for, right?
I think the biggest one is, like, people tend to create some sort of like idea on their heads of what they want to achieve, but they create it like in a very, I would say, like, fake, because they come up to me and say, for example, I want to lose this part of my body.
Specific,
they
right?
grab the love handle kind of part, and they say, I want to remove this for like, or can I remove this for like a month? And it's very hard for me, because they basically don't have any type of knowledge about how the whole process works, and they created like this fake, how can I say it, how was the word,
this, I guess, well,
expectations.
the
They created this fake
expectations,
expectation kind of thing, that they think I can do it for like a month or two and like completely transform my body. And when I tell them that I've been training for like 7 to 8 years now, they're like, no, that's too long, I can do it. I can't do that, it's too long. And when you try to explain how the process goes, for some they can understand it, some they cannot. I mean, they try to, they start, but they tend to, like, I don't know, like, they can leave it in a month or two, because they haven't really got to that point to understand within themselves how this should work, how long this should take, and they just want fast results.
Yeah, I mean, it's always if exercise was a pill, everyone would be taking it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then it's not just the exercise part, right? It's
Yeah.
also like, okay, the nutrition. So it's sort of, and then also developing sort of the consistency or the discipline, right?
Yep.
Because that's almost like you can use the analogy of like that's a muscle in some ways too. It needs to be trained as well, right? It's like, it's not like, all right, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z from the first day, right? Like I think like I would think that, you know, you kind of slowly onboard them, because otherwise it's too much for someone who's, you know, probably never really considered their nutrition, maybe has never even stepped into a gym, you know, is also probably struggling with sleep, you know, drinking like, I don't know, 10 espressos a day and these kind of things, right? So so number one kind of thing is, or the disconnect almost for you then is like, okay, it's not a 30-day transformation that we're after. It's something that it's more of a long-term, like an everyday thing, right?
I think they struggle most with consistency, and they haven't really created those, like you said, they really want the easy way. They are not for it in the like the hard type of way. I mean, I don't want to sound like this what we do is like hard or anything, but it really takes discipline. It's not something that me and you like developed in even a year or two. It really takes more than 2 to 3 years, and people are here for the short term. That's what I try to explain to people, that if you want to do this has to become your new lifestyle, because you're trying to change your way of living, basically. And you can't do that if you try and go back to where you are in the beginning.
And in some ways it's probably also like, I mean, what we are doing is sort of trying to manage different types of stress, right? Like exercise is also a stress, right? But it's sort of, you know, you're just doing it enough that you get stronger and you become more resilient kind of thing, right? And I say stress because also, especially if people are after sort of that quick fix, that 30-day transformation, or like, hey, I just need 8 Instagram photos for the summer or whatever it is, right? Actually, that's stressful for the body to be going back and forth between two extremes almost, right?
And I can also add to that. For example, one thing that I could say is fat loss in this regard. You can also look at the research, and the research also says that people who tend to lose weight fast also regain it very fast, and even more than they had in the beginning. So it's a very like really bad thing if you think about it. And because people don't, they tend to not create those good habits that we are seeking. They just want a quick fix. You get there, but how do you get there? It's
actually like another terrible habit on top of the original kind of habit, right?
Yeah, because they haven't even created those habits, if you think about it.
And I think like, so like there's probably a couple things here, like in terms of like we can explore a little bit and like hopefully like demystify is like a big word kind of thing, but like in terms of the calories, right? But also like when it comes to fat loss versus also weight loss, right? And I think a lot of people, and then this also probably brings us into like, you know, types of training, and here, for example, what I see a lot is, at least from the gym, you know, I don't know what they're doing at home and all these kind of things, but like, you know, it's cardio first, right? Here, and cardio is not the enemy. Cardio has its purposes, right?
Of course.
But it's sort of, you know, okay, you're essentially in this mode of like fixated on calories in a strange way, right? Just trying to burn calories, and then also you sweat a lot, and actually that weight loss is more like you lost water versus burning the fat kind of thing, right?
People tend to think that when you sweat you burn calories. That's not how it works.
You
You burn, but it's not the significant amount that it equals to for you to like lose 10 kilos, for example.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
it's one thing like, you know, okay, you're running a crazy distance and you
Yeah.
sweat so much,
Yeah.
and then also maybe you are in a severe calorie deficit, right?
Yes.
Like there's a number of things
Yeah,
that happen,
of course.
but most
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
time, you know, yes, they get a good run in. Nothing wrong with that. I think
Yeah.
that's super beneficial for
Yeah.
like mental health, blood flow, these kind of things,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
But probably what happens in hindsight is that they work up an appetite because they moved around frantically for 30 minutes or whatever. And it's also, I think sometimes it happens with like people who just do HIIT circuits and these kind of things, right? Like,
yes.
and then they have a meal, you know, they fuel up, and actually it's probably more than what they actually burned, right?
Yeah.
And then they get frustrated because they don't see it,
Yes.
like the change that they're envisioning, right?
Yes. The biggest thing also I would say that people tend to tell me is that I'm not eating a lot and I'm also not losing weight. This is like the biggest misconception that people tend to have. Because by definition, if you're not losing weight, you're not in a caloric deficit. There's no other way around it. People tend to think that they are not eating a lot, but in reality, they are eating more than they need to lose weight.
So if you
That's
probably
the
like
biggest misconception.
with your clients, you probably like, all right, let's start a journal, kind of thing, right?
Let's see what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's what I do with my clients. I try to create like a sort of list with foods that they can eat, but it's in detail, it's measured. Like for example, protein type of foods, let's say meat, it's measured with a specific amount needed for that individual. Same with the carbs, same with the fats. So it's in the net total, it's the same amount of calories that they need to, like, for their purpose. If they need to lose weight, if they need to maintain, or even if they need to gain. It's all calculated to the detail.
So and that's where so going back to sort of like when people say like, oh, I'm not losing weight, it's like, okay, there's this naivety, let's say, right, of like they are, or you know, probably maybe I feel like deep down they know exactly what's going on, right? But it's sort of like, you know, and there's maybe some days that are better because, you know, ate a salad, right, or something, right? Versus like other days where like, okay, I went off the rails a little bit. But I think the probably a lot of times it's sort of like having a bit of a I guess let's call it a misunderstanding of like actually how much or how little sometimes, right?
Exactly.
Because I think some people also like, and again, this is probably an unhealthy habit where they restrict themselves so much that they don't realize, and they're under that stress. So the body is actually trying to hold on, right?
To what they have. Yeah, that happens a lot, I think. Also, that's, as you said, the contrary to that is people who are trying to gain weight. I've had tons of cases where people come up to me and say, I'm eating a lot, but I'm not gaining weight. There's the same thing that goes. They think that they're eating a lot, but in reality, they're not. Because I didn't want to get too much into the metabolism type of thing, but this happens more with leaner type of people. People that are more active throughout the day, that have more like, I don't know how, steps. They do more,
the non-exercise NEAT, basically non-exercise activity thermogenesis, right? Like so, basically, so just have to throw out a fancy term, so I sound like I know what I'm saying. But basically, just movement outside the gym, right?
They have tons of movement, and their intake is not optimal with what they need to gain weight. I mean, if they need 3,000 calories to gain, they're probably eating like 2.5, let's say.
So they're already in a slight deficit, I guess. And on top of that, they don't realize how much they're moving. Right?
So that's the biggest challenge, I would say. These two cases are the
so
most...
So either like the people that, trying to lose weight. And then the other ones are obviously trying to gain weight. And then I guess in terms of sort of so again, then when we look at sort of, you know, because the other thing that gets really confusing for a lot of people, I think, is trends, right?
Yeah.
So it's you have all the different types of diets, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
now there's a whole like, crusade almost, whether it's like, I mean, it gets very tribal, almost like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm vegan versus
Yeah.
I'm carnivore
I'm
versus,
keto.
keto, low carb,
Yeah.
intermittent. Like, I mean, like there's no one diet that
Yes.
fits everyone's needs. It's
Yes.
something very personal, right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, this is like one of the most complex topics in nutrition, I would say. People that create like diet cults, they pick a specific diet and they make it like a religion, basically.
yeah.
They live by it
Mhm.
and they swear by it as is the end all be all thing.
I
And
mean,
that's where it goes wrong, I think, because when you look at it, all diets can work if you have the calorics needed for the diet. If you're like trying to lose weight and you're doing like keto and you're in a caloric deficit, you're going to lose weight. It's not magic. You're just in a deficit. That would happen if you would do like carnivore. That would happen if you do vegan. I mean, it's basic. It's thermodynamics basically. Yeah, that would happen with any type of diet, and especially here, people are very, I would say, uneducated about these parts because they think one is better than the other, and what the research shows is quite the contrary, I would say. The research shows that there's no better diet than the other. What you can maintain and what you can like stick to it and work for you, that's the best thing you could do.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's where it's like it's personal, right?
Yeah,
And
it's very personal.
yeah. And I think like there's one like it's okay to kind of really go I mean, okay, there's certain diets where I think you do need to be very careful because it can mess with like, hormones, the endocrine system,
Yes.
for example, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you, the keto diet, it's maybe not for everyone kind of
Yes.
thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, but I can appreciate if someone really tries to do it.
Yeah.
Then you kind of without
see,
putting themselves in danger, obviously,
Yeah.
right? Like really, because there are certain diets people say they did it and
Yeah.
they're like, it didn't work.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, tell me how you did it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think keto, for example, is one of those where it's like, if you've led a very carb, which a lot of us essentially, right? Very carb focused diets, say, you can't just like switch to keto like that. It takes time for your body to adapt, right?
Exactly. You're like changing your preferred source of energy.
Yeah.
Because the main source of energy is glucose, carbohydrates, and you're changing it to protein or fats.
Fat and ketones, essentially. But your body's like, oh, what's going on?
Yeah.
Right? So.
And yeah, as you said, it can't be for anybody. It has to be like, I would say, specific cases basis. Yeah. In my recommendation type of thing, I wouldn't suggest it for healthy people who like have not like any sort of intolerance of or any sort of like allergy to carbohydrates of any sort. Like if you can eat carbs, you can lose weight. It's just the calories at the end of the day.
Yeah. Like it's whether it's a high carb or a low carb, and I think that's where also of recent carbohydrates are kind of the enemy, right? I'm sure you get this kind of like questions like, oh, should I eat carbs at night, or these, and I get it, like, there's no dumb question, right? Like what you don't know, you don't know, right?
Exactly.
But I mean, ultimately, for the most part, and again, there are instances where calories can get a little bit confusing too, but it's what goes in and what goes out in terms of your output, essentially, right?
Yes.
So in terms of, I guess, like from your clients or what you hear most, like what are sort of the diet, the trending diet kind of things that like you pick up on most? Like are there certain ones? Because I get quite a lot about like fasting, for example.
I'm glad you mentioned fasting because
you're like, all right. I don't mind. I do I mess around with intermittent fasting. I like to go on sometimes a prolonged fast. And it's sort of like just to kind of I mean, sometimes the prolonged fast for me is like more of a mental exercise as well, to actually like genuinely appreciate what hunger is, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's also another
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
common thing where people are eating through like stress or
Yeah,
boredom,
yeah,
or
exactly.
they're on autopilot, right?
Yeah.
And that's where also like, it's not a meal, so they disregard like, oh, it almost counts as if I didn't eat it,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, wait a minute, no, you're snacking all these
Yeah.
time, right? But so yeah, what's your take on fasting then?
Well, I would say that fasting, if it helps you, you have to do it. I mean, fasting can be a great way to create that caloric deficit window, I would say, because
Yeah.
you're eating in a certain period and you're not in a certain period. And the period that you're not eating is very much larger than the period you're eating. So that tends to create a negative energy balance for most people, and that's how they lose weight, because the research also shows that there's nothing actually magic about fasting other than if it can create you that caloric deficit type of window. And if it does, great, you lose weight. But people can also gain weight while doing fasting if they eat enough. Yeah. So that's, I think, the biggest misconception with it. The people here tend to think that it's magic. Like, fasting does this, fasting helps me with this, it does that. And I would really like to believe that, but the evidence says the contrary. It does not. Most of the claimed things. It can be beneficial in some cases, but for the general healthy public, I would not say that it can be that it would change your life, I would say. Yeah.
No, I think it's more sort of in the sense of kind of actually creating genuine hunger, right? Kind of. So one of the things is, I think people don't realize how much stress eating can be, right, on the digestive system.
Yes,
right?
It can be, yeah.
In terms of how much the body needs to be working, right? Maybe saying stress, I mean, it is some form of stress, but like, I don't want to say like, hey, eating is bad. We need to eat, obviously, right? But I think like in terms of like, experimenting it within reason, like of course with people, like if you have certain conditions, like you need to really be careful. This isn't something oh, let's just do it kind of thing. But if you just follow like like sort of almost the circadian rhythm, for example, like if you miss one breakfast, not the end of the world kind of thing, right? And then that is almost like a mini fast kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's about it about fasting, I would say.
Okay. But then for your clients then, because again, going back to sort of like the consistency part, right? Like, when someone comes to you, like, maybe they haven't trained, so that's already something new that they need to kind of adapt to, right? And then of course, if they ask you around the nutrition kind of thing, because I think within this, like, with social media and everything, and then it's sort of like he does that, she does that, it's like, what how do I find, like, what do you suggest, like, for someone to kind of, because also like counting calories, right? I get people who are like, all right, like, can you put together a meal plan? And I'm like, hold on, let's take a step back. Almost like, I probably a lot of times I'm like, hey, let's just, the food journal, take pictures of everything that you eat, for example, right? Like, let's start, because it's sort of like that becomes almost a stress, right? Like, oh, it's starting to measure everything, and most people, I think they really struggle with
that,
right? So what do you kind of like in terms of like these like 3 kind of bullet points of like, all right, let's just focus on these things, and then if we want to go down that path, we can really try to, because it's also at the end of the day, what do they want, right? And most of these people, like, I mean, if you are bodybuilding, then it needs to be to the the grand, like, that's it becomes a science, right? Essentially, right? But for the average person, who wants to just feel well, move well,
you don't need all the specifics. Definitely. I would say that for the people who want the more detailed route, like, as you said, bodybuilding type of thing, gaining more muscle, losing more fat, like the body recomposition thing, as it said, I would like try to create a more detailed approach. Like, as you said, the detailed diet, like the certain amount of protein, certain amount of carbs and fats, calories. Yeah. One thing that I tend to struggle most with people is that they tend to not understand in the beginning, but because it's a completely different approach when I do it, like the specific diet type of thing. They say, for example, that I'm eating this amount, but in reality, they're eating much more. Yeah, because they struggle with measurements.
That I mean, certainly, like, it's hard. I mean, you know, if you've never done it before, you know, that's probably like, because the thing is, especially maybe, you know, lunch, they go out with their coworkers, whatever, right? So it's already kind of like you have to, you know, and then the last thing probably, you know, if they train also in the evening or whenever, like the last thing they want to do is measure and then prepare something, right?
Yeah. That's the most hard part, I would say. But in my case, with the clients I coach, people tend to like pick up fast.
Okay.
Yep. That also is a part of like dedication type of thing. People that are more determined to do that, they can do it, but it's definitely harder. I will not say it's easy, but you can do it. Anyone can do it as long as you have the right guidance, I would say.
Because for me, like my approach when it comes to that side, it's a little bit more relaxed. Because I find it, again, it's building that consistency, right? Like, if we can't, you know, for example, I mean, maybe even taking a step back, it's like, all right, are you drinking enough water? So, and some people struggle with that too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And if they struggle to drink a certain amount of water, they're going to struggle to, like, all right, measure this much, or this is, you know, right? So it's sort of like, I try to maybe, you know, use like sort of like the fifth size to the, like, you know, like, in terms of how your dish should be kind of right, versus like into a beaker and measure it, because that's just too much. And I think there's this theme of, like, whether it's training or nutrition, like complicating it when it's actually quite simple, right? Going back to, again, ultimately, like, hey, it's what you consume versus what you use, kind of thing, right?
The input and output.
Right? Strategy, so it's like trying to strip it down, like what would be like a couple things that, like, maybe if there was 2-3 things that you would kind of like, whether it's your client or someone out there just trying to navigate this like space, like what would be like the things that you would ask them to maybe try to focus on?
The main, I
mean, there's a lot, obviously,
there's
but
a lot, but the main one I would say is trying to be consistent. That's the main thing, because we all have bad days that we don't like measure everything, and we are not like 100% with the diet. It happens even to me. So that's the biggest struggle with them, I would say, because they have this idea that I have to do this, and if I don't do that, then I'm very bad at it. That happens a lot with my clients, and they have like that type of shame that if I don't eat the targeted amounts that I have, I'm gonna like,
it's a failure. It's like,
and
it shouldn't be like that. It's like, because it's
very, it can be flexible, because it, like, should be.
And also, like, looking back at, like, probably you can agree, it's like, oh yeah, maybe 8 years ago, that time when I ate something like a burger, you don't remember that. You know, it's like, or that time where I didn't max out on my training, like, maybe that week or that day it's in your mind. Fast forward 5-6 years later,
you don't even remember it.
Right? Like, but like, at least like probably, you know, at this point we have sort of a strategy or a plan and the habits in place that you're like, all right, enjoyed myself, back on it, kind of thing, right? So okay, consistency. Is there anything like around when it comes to like food choices or something that you would recommend?
I try to navigate them towards like more fruits, more vegetables, more whole grain type of foods, less sugary type of carbohydrate sources, more nutritious ones. Like, you can say, if they don't eat like white rice, they can eat brown. If they want to eat like cereal, they can eat like whole wheat cereal type of stuff. I mean, it's these little changes that can add up when you measure the bigger scale, I would say. And I would try to limit the amount of, for example, type of saturated type of meats they have, because people tend to eat a lot of like sausages, like processed foods, with what I've heard from my clients. I try to limit that, and I would like direct them to like leaner sources of protein, like chicken breast, chicken thighs, like stuff like that.
Classic bodybuilder.
yeah, but they tend to be healthier ones.
Sure. Okay.
If you think about it, this kind of stuff.
Okay. What is then sort of, because as we wrap up this conversation, because there's so much that we can obviously, and we're gonna have to sit down and like kind of maybe choose other themes to discuss for another time. But what is maybe something that's kind of crept up of recent that you're like, okay, no, this is BS, you know?
Yeah, I was talking this with a friend the other day, and the biggest problem I think that we have now is the amount of misinformation that is on social media, especially on platforms like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah,
you see everything. Like, you see a trend pop up and people like go for it. Like, that can be with training, that can be with nutrition. Like, a guy can come up and say like, I did 3 days of water fast and it helped with this disease, or it does that, or it does that. And I think people tend to follow these trends, and that's where the problem starts. People tend to be more uneducated in these parts, and they can fall for anything. This is like, I would say, the biggest problem we have with social media right now.
Is there one? Yeah, and I mean, sometimes, you know, in that individual case, maybe it did, you know, but it doesn't translate to. It's not like, hey, just because you and I then do it, we will get the same results, kind of thing, right? Have you? Is there one, like, something out of these kind of trends, let's say, especially here in Kosovo, that you've kind of picked up on? I mean, there's maybe many.
There's a lot.
Okay.
There's
but
a lot.
If there's like maybe one or two that you're like, okay, guys, like, this is.
People tend to use specific products that they buy and think that this is about a food product.
Okay.
And they use this specific food product, and they think that it's gonna revolutionarily change their life.
Okay.
Yep. They swear by it. They think it's the end all be all. This is the biggest problem that we have here. People tend to buy specific things and think that they will change their life. That can be a food product, that can be like I don't know, you know, skincare type of stuff.
Yeah.
But the biggest one is people fall for scam here a lot. I don't know if you've noticed, but people really do here. Yep. I mean, when you look at it, the nutrition and fitness industry thrives on this. People make millions by people who believe what you sell. This is the biggest problem. You can literally like sell and buy anything right now, everywhere. This can be good, but this, for the most cases, this is bad, because let's say, for example, a 15-year-old guy just goes on TikTok and sees like this jack dude, and that jack dude says to him that you can like attain my physique in 6 months, but you have to do this, and he goes, he trains, he does all those things for 6 months, and of course he doesn't look like that. And what does that do? That creates like these fake expectations that like can even destroy his self-confidence, if you think about it, because he can start thinking like, oh, maybe I'm not too good, maybe I can do this, maybe what's wrong with me, type of thing. And I've heard a lot of like these kind of stories when young people tend to be demotivated by these unrealistic expectations created by scammers, I would say. And scamming sells. People make money by lying.
And I guess is it also, I mean, there's probably some cases where also like it's I mean, supplements as well, right? And I do have I mean, I don't know, maybe this is just an impression that's very limited to sort of like my, you know, within the last maybe what 12 to 15 months of just being in certain gyms where
Yeah.
I do have like, well, through some of also the questions that people have asked me about like different kinds of products and whatnot.
Yeah.
And probably, yeah, there is probably a good amount of also like some products that you're just like, why? What?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. As I said, the fitness industry thrives on these products that don't do really anything. If you think about it, there's like 5% or less of the products that actually work. That's a very scary statistic if you think about it. The products that actually work, I would say I would like maybe add creatine monohydrate. That's arguably the most studied supplement that we have right now. It has the most evidence that it actually is very supportive through physical training.
For a number of reasons, yeah.
Even it has a lot of evidence now about brain health, that it can be very good.
Yeah.
It can improve certain conditions.
That's also one that actually, strangely enough, here people almost consider it as like a drug, no?
Yeah.
Because I guess they I mean, they're not aware of it, right? Like, and it sounds like creatine, right? It sounds like some kind of like steroid almost, kind of, right?
Until late, people here confused protein powder with steroids. So it's like you can see the level of uneducation we have here about these specific topics. Because, I mean, even when I started, when I was like telling my parents about like I want to buy protein powder, they were like, "What? What is that?"
Yeah.
They thought it was like some sort of steroid type of thing.
Yeah.
Because, people don't know. Yeah, the more you know.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Like, I mean, I guess time will tell. Like, and obviously, like there's a bit of responsibility on the people themselves to kind of educate themselves, and then also whether it's from the trainers and gyms and people involved with that, right, to kind of guide them a little bit. Last couple questions in terms of sort of your goals, let's say, or anything specific that you're trying to kind of work towards, whether it's on the sort of training side or the nutrition side that you have, or things that you're kind of excited about. And then if you could also maybe, as we wrap it up, just let people know like where you practice your trade.
The main thing I'm trying to do right now with myself is like improve my body composition. I'm currently eating a lot, so I'm trying to gain more weight. I'm not saying I'm trying because
How much bigger do you want to get?
Yeah. For the people who don't know, I'm like currently consuming like 5,000 calories a day.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like full-time job by just eating.
Yeah. How many meals, out of curiosity?
I would say like 4 to 5.
4 to 5 meals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I space it. I would say more. 4. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But okay,
4
this is
solid
specific
meals.
to you, and you're trying to gain weight.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
And you're
gain
also
weight,
training for that as well, right?
Yep. So the training and the nutrition part is very specific to my needs right now. Yeah, I'm focusing more on like whole body, I would say, training type of stuff, bodybuilding. Yeah, trying to gain more muscle throughout my whole body, basically.
Are you, out of curiosity, like, are you? Because I might have asked you this in the past, but are you looking to compete in bodybuilding? Has it? I mean, it's crossed your mind, right? Like,
it definitely does. Time will tell, but as of currently, it's not on my list. I would say, yeah, I'm trying more to focus on my career, like
as a trainer.
As a trainer with my clients, and also like improve my personal physique, I would say. Competition, it definitely has crossed my mind, but it is another topic that we could discuss maybe another day, because it's very nuanced for me. And if I would decide to go that route, it would definitely change my life. So I would have to like focus more on that and leave my clientele and my like work type of stuff. They would struggle, I would say. So maybe in the future, I don't know.
Okay.
As of my work and what I do, I'm a personal trainer. I'm also a nutritionist, dietitian by profession. And I currently am just working at 4 Points by Sheraton in Marigona, Georgia, Marigona. And this was about it.
Okay. Awesome. Virtyt, I appreciate your time. and obviously we know that there's like we haven't even scratched the surface
Yeah.
in terms of like that was like some overarching kind of like nutritional related
Yeah.
topics. We didn't even really go into like training
No,
approach, that
Yeah,
kind of thing. But this was really fun getting to know you a little bit better as well, and then also just like trying to hopefully clarify some of these questions that can be confusing, because there are like, I mean, there's just so much content out there, and it's already for the person just starting.
Yeah.
It can be a bit daunting and also, I mean, just outright confusing, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, thanks again for your time. And thank you for tuning in, everyone. This was another episode of Never the Right Time on Urban FM 103.5 or 105.5 FM. Thanks, guys.